practitioner of 19 years doing a technique called muscle phasing. I found muscle phasing by necessity because I had 9 shoulder dislocations of my right shoulder, and I didn't like life dislocating my shoulder once every 6 to 9 months playing basketball. It was much better when I didn't do that. So it has been, in May, it will be 18 years since I dislocated a shoulder. So very good. But that put me down a road to ask questions. Why me? Why now? Why this? What did I do wrong? What can I do right? And one of the biggest frustrations I had was I didn't have answers to any of that, even though I was pursuing for 6-7 years. Anybody know what it's like to pursue something and be frustrated and not have answers for a period of time? And then, but I was still looking. So I was actively searching. And I found some things, and then I have to ponder those things. And if something good comes to me, I like to get it out to other people and test it and say, hey, if it worked for me, will it work for the people that I know and care about? So then I put all them through it. And then will it work, in the broad masses? And if it passes those tests, then I am a promoter of it. Some of the things are things I'm going to put in my own toolbox, and other things are just things I want to know about and can send some other people to those things. But life is good when we're adding good things in. So I don't know what everybody's pain is here in this room, but I'm sure we all have some. And I don't know what your desired ending place is. Like, how good does mine have to get before I'm satisfied? I don't know what that is either. But I find that there's things that we can leverage, because anytime you get new information in your brain, you activate a different amount of intensity for change. And that's one of the things we want to leverage tonight. And, the power of being in a room where we have like-minded people that are looking for and willing to celebrate with people. So I am going to put a few things out that help me make sense of life, and then I'm going to open it up to questions and answers as I go. But wherever you are on a comparison, and there's lots of tangents that we can get off on in life. There's lots of distractions. And when you can clarify, I put things on a gradient, and it's a contrast. It's like, should I or shouldn't I? Yes or no is very rarely the adequate question. It's, to what percentage should I? If we change subtly, it's a lot easier. So I've seen hundreds of people in my career, and they all fit into this graph. There's people that I'll see when they're in crisis. Meet a lot of people that have been over handlebars, bikes, dirt bikes, four-wheelers, snowmobiles. So if you've ever had an experience where you were on something and then you weren't, we might meet, because I become that guy. Oh, well, then we got to go see that guy. Okay. So crisis knows that here's a ledge, and you're hanging over the side of the ledge, and you're trying to climb back on. Life has been very interrupted. Everybody around you knows you're sporting a cast or crutches or something, where I just want to get back to how life was before this day. If I say that this is 0, where nothing's working anymore, and this is 10, this is optimal. If we're a 1 or a 2, we are in crisis. There isn't much else you're thinking about. 4 days after I dislocate my shoulder, I'm thinking about, how do I butter toast? I want to make a sandwich. We're going to use our left hand. Okay. Now, when we make some inputs, or some things are going to get better just through rest and whatever else, but the next category is what I call the danger zone. We're a 3 or a 4 on the functionality scale for whatever system it is that we're working on. At a 3 or a 4, nothing's impressive, but at least we're out of this crisis zone where a stiff wind isn't going to blow us off the cliff anymore. But we still have pain. It's still a major thing. We're still looking at limitation in life. We're still not happy with how things are going. And we're probably in a pursuit of how do I make my life better. The biggest zone here is what I call the comfort zone. And in the comfort zone, there's a broad spectrum. You could be 4.5 all the way up to, 7.5-ish and be comfortable. It's like when I went to grade school, we had athletics. I went to a small grade school. We had 30 people in our class. And once a year, we had the wonderful privilege of doing like the aptitude test for physical education, which meant we're going to try to do sit-ups and pull-ups. And then our favorite was the 600-yard dash, which was called, we're going to run around the block for 1 lap. And when we're running around the block for that 1 lap, me as a guy, I'm looking at where am I in this pecking order of speed and whatever. And I always found that I felt like I worked really, really, really hard to get to like 5 out of 10, where other people, they were just fast and it was easy. And I'm like, this is not easy. And I'm trying harder, and I know I'm trying harder than these people that I know, and my result wasn't very good. Some of the people are in the comfort zone here, and some people have a pursuit of excellence where they need to explore what I call the optimal zone. Professional athlete, you're using your body, you're a bodybuilder, something like that, where you're like, hey, I am trying to be the best in the world at mountain climbing or martial arts or pickleball or whatever it is for people. It doesn't matter where you are morally, and it doesn't matter where you're going to try to go to morally. There is no I should be in any of these zones. Does everybody track that? We like to judge as a society, but it's a fool's errand. Now, I don't know what would represent what I'd call the promised land for anybody. But like my promised land is, I want to run, we'll exit that one. I want to run and jump pain-free. Now, I used to be like, I want to run fast and I want to jump high, which I kind of do. But I really want to jump. I want to run as fast as I can without pain, and I want to jump as high as I can without pain. And I believe I'm 50, and I believe I can run faster than I ever have, and I believe I can jump higher than I ever have. Now, I never set any records in either of those two things, okay? But it is fun to play in the arena where the world tells us ad nauseum, this direction exists. Does anybody know anybody that got physically worse over time? Does anybody know anybody that, had to try real hard to get physically worse? This is not where the effort is required. It's like the escalator that's moving backwards, and if you stop moving forwards, you automatically move backwards. There is what we call a downward spiral. We'll go with orange and see if orange wants to cooperate for the camera. There's the downward spiral, and there's the negative push that goes this direction. It is automatic. The world, in the systems of the world, the devil is seeking to devour and to destroy, and he's hard, harsh, and pressing. He's not asking for permission to steal and destroy. Okay? So theft and destruction is automatic. Now, why I am here and why Kevin is here and why most people are here is there's also the ability to go this direction. And there's only one way that I have found to do this, to make gains. It's called on purpose. Seek and ye shall find, and knock, and continue knocking, and the door will open. Okay? And it says that there is a straight gate that leads to life. And there's a wide gate and a broad road that leads to destruction. Has anybody witnessed this phenomenon called life? When I said, who knows somebody that's losing ground, that's the broad road. Okay? And the narrow gate that leads to life, they don't even talk about a road. I said, hey, there's a path, there's a narrow gate, or straight is the gate, that leads to life, and then there's a broad road, like there's a broad gate and a road, like it's paved, like there's traffic on it. This one is like, okay, yeah, if you can find it, and there's no beaten path there. But when you find it, it's fun. So I am 50 years old. When I was 20, I was not flexible. I didn't know about flexibility. I wasn't training in it. I was trying to run fast, and I was trying to jump high. And I wanted kind of pain-free, but I wasn't really pursuing it. When I learned about a narrow road called, here's the inputs that your body wants to be flexible, and started putting them in, and then deciding that I'm going to do this on a regular basis. So I'm learning the rules of what it's like to change your flexibility. It takes 200 days to change your flexibility. At 20, 2 weeks, you want me to do something for 2 weeks to get a result? Are you kidding me? How about, what can we do in 2 days or 2 hours? 200 days? But if you decide, okay, whatever it is, I will pay that price. I don't know if the camera shows up, but I'm 50, and guess what? You can be flexible. I can get into that and get out of that, and I am not done. I'm better on the curve of when I was 20. I was probably here, and on flexibility, I'm probably there for certain parts of my body. But I know, because I've been, I know myself well, and I know my injury history, that I'm not done, and I'm making progress. And I know that that was easier today than it was 2 months ago. All right? Now, the first thing that has to happen is the mentality of time is an accumulator. So we accumulate things over time. But what direction we go in is a choice. And when we go into the world system, a lot of the choices that are available aren't great, and this is baked in the cake. There's lots of times where I was looking for answers and somebody said, well, you're not 20 years old anymore. You're not 25. You can't expect. It's like, why can't I expect? You just don't know of a way. Everybody that you know goes this wrong direction, the direction that I don't want to go. Does that make sense to everybody? So I don't know what it is that you want to be able to do that brought you, out of your house or brought you into the YouTube world where you're looking for answers. But if you're looking for ways to get out of pain, understand your pain. So one of the biggest things for me was it was so emotionally draining for me to not know why my shoulder was so unstable when it was unstable. I could go bench press 250 pounds. I'm like, you need some stability to do that. I'm like, I feel like I'm strong. And then when I'd go into certain positions, I feel like nothing was holding me together because nothing was holding me together. Then I started, learning some things about stability and how the shoulder works and some principles. And then I'm like, mystery solved. I was more like, now I'm like, how did I not dislocate more often than I did once I learned the condition of things? But this is a mentality. You have permission to change zones. It takes 6 times the energy, 6 times the time to move from crisis to the danger zone as it does to maintain the danger zone or the next zone. So if you're trying to move from one to the other, it's going to take you 6 times the amount of effort to make progress as it is to maintain. So once you learn the rules and you decide, well, either I do or I don't want to pursue this, and life is more fun when we're winning, and we can't win games that we don't know how to play those games and what the rules are. So I am going to move to the next thing that I wanted to bring up today as we have this zone conversation. And working with people for almost 20 years now, one of the things that I see as a limiting factor is, let's say that we are in the danger zone. So one of the things about being in crisis or being in the danger zone is everybody that you know knows that you're in crisis or you're in the danger zone. Okay? If we're not doing good and we're doing really bad, they're tired of us complaining about it. We probably look to other people like we're not trying to solve it. Like, do you realize that, you put on an extra 10 pounds every year and it's been like more than a year? And, so we can do slightly bad. Okay? We can do slightly bad and people will let it slide. People notice, but they're not going to say, you got to do something about it. Now, it gets too bad. Then it's like intervention time, family crisis. We need to go make decisions for you. You obviously can't make decisions for yourself. So if we find ourselves in a position where even if we're doing slightly bad and we want to pursue, or we're doing too bad and people are telling us we got to do something, I was tired of dislocating my shoulder. Every time I dislocate my shoulder, here's what would happen. My shoulder is out. I'm in major pain. Like somebody's got a car battery, jumper cables to major nerve bundles in my body saying, get out of this. And then it snaps back in and I go, oh gosh. And then I'm like, will I be able to dress myself? How much function am I going to have of this right arm? Can I still drive cars and race, which I love to do? Can I play guitar? Can I still play basketball? Blah, blah, blah. All of that is a mystery. because right now I can't lift my arm. And I don't know the extent of the damage. But while I'm not dislocated, I'm not thinking about any of those things, right? So I'm motivated to look. So now you go find some things that work. You find some things that push this direction. And you say, hey, I'm going to go pursue that. And now you start getting better instead of worse. And everybody's like, oh, like, thank God you found something. And now you're getting better. And then you're getting better. And now you're doing what they call pretty good. Hey, I see you've lost some weight. You started to work out. You're looking like you're in pretty good shape. How good a shape do you need to be in now? Because it's okay to be slightly bad, and it's okay to be slightly good in our society. We can do slightly good. But don't go getting too good. Because if you get too good, now in comparison to you, I'm looking like I'm needing to do something. So we want you to stay in this little, slice of life called, mediocre, halfway up the mountain. The world will let you get halfway up the mountain without giving you a hard time. You get all the way at the bottom, they're going to yell at you. You start getting too far up. How flexible do you need to be, John? You're 50, act your age. I don't want to. My age is 26. I've just been doing that for 24 years. So one of the things that I figured out, in 2005, I met a man named Rick Johnson in Prior Lake who became a mentor. He was the first person that looked at my injury, and he was not overwhelmed by my history. I had taken this beat up shoulder and beat up all kinds of other things to lots of people. And some people were like, it was not in their pay grade. I would say, hey, I've dislocated the shoulder 8 times to a therapist who was very nice and very nurturing and wanted to help. But she's like, I have no clue what to do about that. And I don't even want to touch it because I might make it worse. And I'm like, maybe I don't want you to touch it either because you might make it worse. What are you comfortable working on? Hands. Okay, great. I have hands too. Work on my hands. Okay. But then I found somebody that I said, hey, I've dislocated the shoulder, 8 times at that point. And he said, well, that's about enough of that. And I'm like, yeah, it's about enough of that. And then I started learning some things like shoulder posture was way off. I learned what trauma tissue looked like. I got given an exercise, and I was a weight room guy, and he started talking to me about my head posture being forward, where my so in 2005, my posture looked like this. My shoulders were rotated in to the point where my arms stayed in front of my body. And my head was forward about 2.5 to 3 inches. So when I look at you right now and I said, this shoulder hurts. Can anybody tell? And it's like, this is so weird because I look at pictures from 2005 and it's like, hey. Now I was probably 10, 12 pounds bigger, lived in the weight room and stuff, but it's like, then I started learning, hey, there's ways to balance out the muscular structure. And then it's like after a month of working on stuff. So I got, and I don't even have the proper way to describe this, but anybody ever seen therapy bands that are like very thin and they're like straps and there's like the green ones that you can see through? So he gets out this band and I can see through it. Now, I was probably in the weight room bench pressing, 225 pounds to 250 pounds. And I'm like, what are we going to do with a see-through band? And he's like, well, you're going to put it over your head and you're going to go like this and you're going to do pull-aparts over your head. And I'm like, with that thing? And then I proceeded to try to do one. And my arm did this. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe, my starting point is in this area with these muscles, I was in crisis. And what my body was demonstrating is this is what trauma looks like. Anybody see any uncertainty in one of my limbs as it moves? It was shaking like a leaf. And I tell you what, my man card was at stake. My ego was fully engaged. And I said, I don't care what it takes. I'm going to tear car tires apart behind my head, versus let this happen again. I'm like, this is not on video. This didn't happen. I'm like, what is the heaviest band? Oh, there's a very thick, gray one. I'm like, yeah. So in 30 days, motivated, why? I'm trying to get out of crisis in the danger zone. I want to be over here and have no experience around it. So when I did that, after 30 days, I'm like, I can breathe. I felt 10 years younger. Why? Because my posture was more lined up, where now I am more balanced. I'm not stressed to be in this position. I'm like, where has this been? The second thing that happened, I was 31 years old, and I'm like, I could have learned this when I was 5. We don't know about posture in our culture. I didn't know what shoulder posture was supposed to look like. I walked like a gorilla, arms in front, just going like this. It's like, didn't know. But everything that I did was, the river is pushing in a certain direction. We can name, if I said we have to name 100 things that we do with our hands, everybody lift your hands up. Okay? Put them in front of you, palms down. And name something that you've done in this position. Oh, I drove a car to get here. Oh, I rode a bike. Oh, I bench pressed. Oh, I used to do whatever. Now, tell me something that you do with your hands behind your back. Okay? So, we have certain things we do in the bathroom that we might put our hand behind our back and maybe pulling up our trousers. Back in, high school, it was, you had to put the comb in the Guess jeans, in the back. But that's been a long time. Okay? So we're going to get going in the direction that we're moving. We're being pushed into this. Anybody ever sat? Yeah. Like, anybody remember a day where you didn't sit in a chair? Okay. Do you think the chair is helping us? Not necessarily. It's not a bad position compared to any other position, but it's a bad position to be in for a long time if you don't go do the things that move you into balance after you get out of the chair. Okay, so there's certain things that are the poison that we're all going to endure. Anybody endure any electronics today? Like a phone or a computer or an iPad or radio waves or whatever? It's like, it's here. Okay, AI is coming. All those things are inputs. They may be big inputs. And for every input, if this is one that's pushing us this way, there is an input over here that is equal and opposite. And if you find this one, the good news is that you don't have to go into the positive direction for the same amount of time. You don't have to unsit for 8 hours if you sat for 8 hours. You could probably unsit in 5 minutes and get your posture back. Or you can just get welded in the sitting position and find all the things that hurt while you're welded in the sitting position. That's things that are happening. So slightly good. So when I met my teacher, Rick was a big kid. He was 51. I was 31. He played racquetball, and his favorite pastime was torturing college kids on the racquetball court. So I learned that not being athletic-ish, but trying to be. So I was fit, but I just wasn't fast. But, I had lots of people torture me playing racquetball, because if you don't have skill, and somebody does, you will lose. I don't care how fast you are and how out of shape you think they are. Racket skills can, bridge the gap, as they would say. So he loved getting body work. So it was very easy for me to go, swap with him before or after class and get him tuned up. And he got body work on a regular basis. I had been getting body work, seeing people that would do normal massage. Anybody have a massage where they're trying to get your whole body touched in 55 minutes? You know? So I was doing that. I was doing that for years before I saw, somebody that did, neuromuscular body work, like connecting it to the brain or looking at injury. That was just de-stressing, which is great, and increasing blood flow and all those things that were great. But the practitioners that I knew, I would ask them, how often do you get work done? And you know what most of them said? Well, once every 3 to 6 months, maybe. And I'm like, oh. So I knew these people. So every, 90 to 180 days. Then I talked to one of the ladies that I saw, and she's booked out for 6 weeks minimum at a time. And I said, how often do you get work done? Or how did you get started in body work? And she said, well, I got work done twice a week for 3 years. So I'm like, oh, twice a week for 3 years. So two times a week for 3 years straight. That was her introduction to body work. And then once, a quarter or once every 6 months. Now, these people were getting out of the industry because their hands were falling apart and everything was falling apart. And I said, okay, well, I've had, in this, I had these extremes that gave me permission to get work done once a week minimum. And I've been doing that for 19 years. And, the reason that I'm here today in front of people excited is I'm a natural promoter of the things that I love to do and won't be without. So if you want to know what hell looks like doing the same thing like a year from now that I would be doing today. I hate that constancy. So the last time I held a job was 1995. Okay, so I'm psychologically unemployable. So I've been working for myself for that amount of time. But before that, when I had jobs, I never had a job for more than a few months. I think the longest one was like 11 months. Why? Because I'm easily distracted and want to go do something else. So 19 years of doing body work is because I get to add something new all the time. So 1 to 3 things a year will make it into my toolbox, or I'll get my attention. But I don't care what week it is. I can tell you the highlight of my week is called Wednesday morning. Why? Because that's when Kevin comes over and tunes me up. So all the things that I did, all the inputs that I do, all the things I ask my body to do, I know that there's an apology coming and help is on the way. And then Kevin goes on vacation every once in a while, and those are the stumbles. Like, how long? 2 weeks? Why? Okay, all right. So you can get used to that. Now, the world is not going to give you permission to do that. If you are seriously injured, you have a window of time, and it's acceptable, to get it done. But I like to give people permission to say, wherever it is that you want to end in, the permission psychologically to go pursue excellence isn't an easy conversation. So everybody has permission, and people ask me, how often should I come get work done? I'm like, never ask your therapist. Don't ever give them your schedule or your checkbook. Okay? You make all those decisions. But I find that when you find the opportunity to do good things, and I call it a feel-good button, push it as many times as you want. And just know, once you get to be doing what the world is going to say is too good, well, you can do good, but not too good. They don't know what they're talking about. that make sense? So these are the highlights to a philosophy for gaining grounds. Does anybody have any questions on this subject so far? Okay. Now, the rest of what I want to do with my time is answer questions that people have, because some people in the room know me and some people, don't know me, and a lot of people that are going to be online haven't met me in person. But this is the philosophy that I've been using to make ground. So is there any subject of pain or how do I get out of a certain danger zone that people would like to know more about?
How do you deal with pain when it comes to swelling? You're trying to fight swelling, but you're also trying to build up the muscle around it.
Okay.
Like knee swelling.
So, when we have an injury, let's just say that an injury is, I want to define trauma. Trauma is overwhelm. So more force or energy comes into the system than the system can easily absorb or dissipate. Okay? There's a difference between falling off of something and going into a barrel roll and dissipating that energy, and then there's, the belly flop into the water. Not good. So that energy is not going to dissipate. When we overwhelm connective tissue, so most of what injury is going to be first and foremost in the brain. And secondly, it's going to be in tendons or ligaments. Tendons and ligaments do not get blood flow like a muscle belly does. Okay? So there's barely a trickle. So a tendon or a ligament, when you have injury or the cells are going to be replaced. So if you're going to do renovation in a house, let's say, sometimes you go to the cabinets and go, we're going to resurface these cabinets. They got good bones. We're going to put new hardware on it. Okay? We don't need swelling for that. But if you come in there and you go, tear them out, they're full of mold, we're going to start over, then the body needs the inflammatory process. Fire up the oven, we need to bake some new cells. Okay? If we're going to make new cells, we need blood to come, we need blood flow, we need nutrients to get to the site. So if you're, get an ankle and you have sprained an ankle, and I've sprained all my ankles many, many, many times, you're going to get swelling because you need, number one, you're going to have a bunch of extra traffic. Part of that traffic is nutrients for new cells to come. So it's going to be increased blood flow, and it's going to ask the blood flow to come from someplace else in the body. So you're going to get this heat, you're going to have swelling, the body is going to go into an inflammatory process, it's going to crank the voltage way up. It takes 2 times the voltage to make a new cell that it does to keep a cell and maintain it at a healthy state. Okay, you're going to have throbbing pain if it's alkaline. Alkaline is just new cells are going to be happening. Now, we have to get old waste out. Okay, so when we tear stuff up, I kind of look at it like a tree falling on a house. If you have a storm and a tree falls on your house, guess what? You're going to ruin your lawn. And it's your neighbors are going to, if I live in Northeast Minneapolis, parking is limited. You're going to have some unhappy neighbors because there's going to be a tree removal service that's going to come and they're going to ruin your yard. They're going to be parking up and down your street so your neighbors can't find a place to park. Your neighbors going to be like, how long are they going to be doing the tree stuff? So all of this extra traffic is part of this inflammation. It's part of this swelling. Why is it getting so big? Well, it's getting big, number one, because your brain is set up for survival. Okay? We are programmed for survival, but we live in civilization. Now, we can survive in the jungle, in the wild. Most of our ancestors did in some way, shape, or form. If you sprain your ankle because you're running through the forest because the bear is hunting you and you do not want to get eaten, you want what we call worst case scenario in your nervous system to say, I still need to move. Pump this sucker up. I need enough stability to hold my weight, and I just lost the main part of my structure called the ligament. That ligament is not going to hold weight on its own. So if I make a cast and pump this thing up, we could still make it, or we're going to give ourselves the best chance. Now, we live in civilization, and there is no bear. You have crutches, you have wheelchairs, you have Uber, you have DoorDash. You're going to be sitting on your couch. We don't need all of the resources being spent on certain things, and that's where you go into body work and you go into the brain and say, hey, listen, I know that you want to make sure that Kevin gets away from the bear. I'm telling you, we're in this room, we're on a table, there's no bear. We don't need to throw all of this excitement towards this thing. We're protecting it ourselves. We have braces. We can put all kinds of ways to fortify the system, but your body doesn't know that. Now, what we like to do in our society is we like to get out of pain. So we want the pain to go away. We want to get rid of this symptom we call pain, and we want to pretend that we're fine. And what we mean by fine is it doesn't hurt anymore. But we might lose a lot of function before we actually have pain. And if we want to get out of the discomfort of this swelling, we might chase away some of those trucks that are trying to bring blood flow to an area, and we'll put an anti-inflammatory. Anybody ever heard of ibuprofen? Okay. I remember a friend of mine who was working on somebody who was a Minnesota Viking player, and he was an active player. And when he walked in, she said, what can I help you with? And he's like, well, I'm fine as long as I have 17 Advil a day. And she's like, well, then you're not fine. And your kidneys are going to tell you that you can't do that forever. But if you got paid millions of dollars, you might consider it, unless you know something better to do, right? Why does he do that? Because all the other people on the broad road, that's what they do. And we think that professional athletes have the best care. I would disagree. But if we interrupt this inflammatory process because we don't like it, we don't know what it is, and we don't know how to honor that system, and say, we need these cells to grow, we need to feed them some good nutrition, so when that blood gets there, it's bringing the things that we need to make new cells, and we want to give it 6 weeks for the connective tissue to mature. So if something is re-swelling all the time, it's probably because it's not getting everything that it needs, or it's not getting the rest that it needs, or there's some blockage around it. There can be a lot of reasons. But there's a lot of people that have chased away the body's natural inflammatory response to injury because it was uncomfortable for the short term. You know, so is there a specific area of the body that the swelling is that you?
My knee.
The knee, yeah. So, yeah, we can talk about the knee. The knee is typically trapped between an ankle that is dysfunctional and hips that are dysfunctional. But yeah, so welcome to the club. A lot of the work that I had to do to get out of, get into the splits is the same work that is getting out of knee pain and knee swelling and other stuff. So you're in the right place. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
We need happy tendons. The tendon is what the brain uses to figure out where we are in space. Our movement is reflex based. You don't think about what you're going to recruit to do any movement. If you go to touch your nose with your eyes closed, your body knows where you are in space because of the tension that's on your tendons and your ligaments. When you're playing sports and you duck and then you see the ball coming, because that's typically how it happens. Your energy field picks up the object before your eyes do. Our eyes are usually too slow to deal with most things, and the information that goes through our fascia goes through at the speed of light. So if I think about move my finger, okay, with my brain, the nervous system, the pulse is like 60 meters per second. And 60 meters is a decent, distance, and 1 second's pretty quick. But it's not quick enough to close your eyes if, a bug is coming at you while you're on your motorcycle. Our reflexes move at the speed of light, 187,000 miles per second. Slightly quicker, okay? And we don't have to think about it. We don't have time to think about it. So when we're in these car accidents, our body goes into self-preservation mode, or we're falling off of something. It's trying to not have your head hit, catastrophic into some object. We're game over for everybody. So that nervous system runs through the ligaments and the tendons, and it's in your reflex system, and you access it in your brain. You're never truly healed. You haven't recovered from the injury until you've addressed the connection of the brain to that injury. So that's what we do through movement, accessing that on the table.
You want to talk about recruiting other muscles when that muscle isn't working?
Yeah. So the way that I look at the body, and his question was, what does compensation look like? Because compensation is one of the things that I say is we have the pain that we know about, like how it happened, like I smashed my knee or I twisted my ankle, and then we have the mysterious pain. Like, I know that I sprained my ankle, but my back is hurting. And I didn't fall on my back that I know of. But if you look at your body like, a roadway, and weight is supposed to go through all of our system, keep us upright, and we have plan A, which is the design of where weight should go. This is what, Kevin's got an 8-month-old. He's more mobile now. What is his movement strategy? Is he crawling yet? Barely. Okay. But he's exploring, how do I deal with all these things, and implementing it, and it's built into the nervous system. But we have things that happen called trauma. We're aware of major trauma, car accidents, plane accidents, sports accidents. But we have all kinds of little things. It's like when you walk, it's hard to not have a misstep. And trauma can be more than just physical. It can be getting yelled at. It can be mental, emotional, psychological, other types of trauma. But we have the design of where weight should go, and we should be pretty balanced. So like car accidents. When I'm in a car accident, I've been in 5 car accidents, I would call them all minor when they happened, according to the world. I don't call any car accident minor anymore because of the force that goes through the body. But as my head is whipping, it is trying to, like when I'm absorbing force, my hand's on the steering wheel, I'm in a seated position, I'm kind of floating, I'm not expecting, and I'll say, wham! Overwhelm kicks in. Big noises, sounds expensive, am I in trouble? Whose fault was this? Why am I being punished? All these thoughts are going through the head. And then you come to a stop and it's like, is my car dead? Is the other people hurt? What's going on? That's what we're thinking about, but our body is saying, input, head starts moving, slow that melon down, because if it hits something, game over for everybody. So everything goes into self-preservation mode, built into your nervous system, worst case scenario. Now, we have muscles that move our head, and we're used to keeping our head up, but we're not used to the force of trying to stop. Now, our muscles are way stronger in reverse. So if I'm trying to lift something with a concentric shortening of my arm, and I could curl 100 pounds, I could lower under control 160 pounds and lower that under control. So if I'm going to blow a fuse in my body, the likelihood of blowing the fuse while I'm trying to move something is much lower than if I'm trying to slow things down. Like when I fall, I can absorb more force than I could. I'm not going to hurt myself doing a push-up, but I could hurt myself doing a forced face plant, which is a reverse push-up. Okay? Now, when we have major muscles that are going to do most of the work, they're going to blow a major fuse. And now when we come out of it, a percentage of our available functionality in those muscles is reduced. So let's say my neck before an impact was at 100% functionality. We'll pretend that. And now I went through this event, and now I have damaged, I have torn some fibers, and let's say I'm at 80%. So I have 80% of the functionality of my major muscles, but my head weighs the same. So now I have a load where some of the fibers that are supposed to be doing jobs, they don't show up. And your body goes, well, John's going through space. Who's going to move him? And they go, oh, well, we have these secondary muscles. We'll just use these little guys inside here to do this primary function. And they go, we're tiny. What are we going to do? You're going to do, whatever you need to do. You're just going to complain about it. Oh, okay, I can do that. The major stuff didn't show up. Minor stuff is trying to do it, and we don't like it. And your body goes, John's got a headache. Oh, gosh. Where'd this headache come from? Your body's saying we're moving function. Now, in order for those secondary muscles to do their job, we're just going to have to change the position of everything and get off center. So we're going to distort. I hurt my big toe, so I'm not going to walk straight. I'm going to turn this foot out. I'm going to lean most of my weight to my left leg, and then I'm going to turn this one out because my big toe hurts. Well, guess what? I do this for a while. And the body starts thinking that this is a usable program. Why? It got us through yesterday. Right? I call it limp mode, but our body is limping. And it's like, okay. Now, I remember when I was driving on 35W and then a certain day, like a bridge collapsed. And we didn't have 35W. And I usually go south. And when I was going south, guess what? For a while, I'm like, oh crap, yeah, I can't use 35W. Where am I going to go? After 9 months of training, I'm going south. Guess what? Can't use 35W. And then I'm on Highway 100 going, 35W's open. What are you doing? Oh, I'm doing what I did last time. Okay? So our body will get lanes of traffic that get dinged up, that the body says temporarily, in quotes, temporarily, shift this weight over to here and do it this way. And everybody goes, I don't like this plan. So when we went from 100% functionality and now we had this trauma, now we're at 80% and we have the same stress level on this 80% functionality of the employees called our muscles in our body. Guess what happens after a while? Some of these guys quit and now we're at 70% functionality. Same workload, way the same, maybe way more. Don't know. Maybe moving slower, maybe whatever it is. 70% of your workforce with 100% of the workload. See why we talk about the downward spiral that exists? Why? Because as a society, we accumulate trauma. But we don't know how to assimilate trauma so that we can process it through the system and get back function. So what's fun is taking somebody that it doesn't matter how long ago it was, wipe out some major muscles in your neck, and we start recruiting, and we start this downward spiral, and we do that for a couple of decades. We don't even relate it to the incident that happened because we don't know what to do about it anyway. And now we're down here at 50% function. Well, you know what you're doing at 50% function? Not a lot of the things that you liked to do with your body. Now you might just be trying to get through the day. Just if I can get through today. Okay? And then you're like, okay, well, we can get through today. We got a 50% workforce today. What are the inputs that we're doing to restore function? Nothing. How do we know that we're doing things to restore function? They're on this list called on purpose. So if you're not doing it on purpose, it is not happening. Or don't plan on it happening. Well, maybe the whole thing, I don't think so. At least not significantly. So if you're at 50% today and you're not doing anything positive input to get better, what are you expecting to be 6 months from now? It's not 51%. It's probably 48%. Now, here's the fun part. Because we have this worst case scenario in the brain, and because we have this 6 weeks where things need to get better, we need to shift that foot from a big toe for 6 weeks. But after 2 months, guess what? We could probably load that toe again. How are we going to load that toe? On purpose. Where are we going to do it? We got to do it in a safe environment, out of gravity. Sitting on a table, there's no load in your toe. Okay? We have to bring the workload down to the functionality of the joint structure currently, which may be barely moving or maybe me assisting you in moving it. But that's where you have to start building functionality. But if you're at 50% function in your system and we go find some of these things roads that haven't been driven on. Why aren't they been driven on? They had huge potholes. I've been driving down 35W and going, wow, they better fill this one in because the next thing that's going to happen is I'm going to lose a wheel on this one. Okay? There's times to shut things down because they can't handle a load. But we go into limp mode and we do this over and over and over and over again. And we don't go back in. So now we can go into the brain and go, you're not loading this. Why? Well, there was a huge pothole right here. I'm like, yeah, well, they filled that in like in 2014. Yeah, you're right. Well, maybe we should update the GPS to let you drive on that. 35W's been there for a while. We can drive on it now. But we need a safe environment to go test this. And we need to reconnect it to the brain itself, where the brain says, well, you're right. We just haven't updated it. Why? Because we're used to being in overwhelm and going backwards. But if you go from 50% function to 60%, something very strange happens. It's like going to work where you're used to things coming on your desk, and it's like every time, once a month somebody leaves, and how do you know? Something landed on your desk. Susie left. How do you know she left? All the work that Susie's supposed to do is now on Kevin's desk. Kevin, we got more work for you to do. I'm already overstressed. I know. But Susie left, so there you go. I'll see you in a couple weeks. Then you're like, I'm putting my resume online and I'm looking for some place to go. I'm going to quit soon. That's what everybody's used to, right? The broad road. But now we come in and say, Kevin, how are you doing today? Great. Susie came back to work. What? Yeah. Remember all the stuff that Susie used to do that you hate? Yeah, and we never paid you to do it, but we asked you to do it. We gave you more time. Who wants more time to do it? We'll give you more time. No more pay, but we'll give you more time to do it. Great. I can spend more time at work doing stuff I don't like. Great. So now Susie comes and we're like, this doesn't happen. My workload just got easier. What is going on? Why? Because we turned some things back on in the brain and we're loading some tissue that we could have loaded, but we just don't know that we could load it. We haven't updated the brain. We haven't created the conditions to go back and reevaluate it. Or maybe some things did need to be paved and we fill it in. So I call it an apology that the body accepts to have that conversation.